In this video, we're going to be creating a basic linked grid structure from scratch. Now, if you haven't previously seen my linked list video, I'd encourage you to watch that, and I'll put a link in the description to it so you'll be able to find it pretty easily. Now, the key to a linked grid is, well, first just understand that we need a different kind of node. So you can see what I've done is I've drawn actually a sample of the node down here in the corner. This isn't actually part of the grid, but I'll just need to be able to copy and paste it for the diagram that I'm about to make. So the way that we do a linked grid is we need to have some sort of root or some place to start. So I'll just call it first. Then what we're going to do is we are going to add nodes onto the list. Now, it's not the same as when we add a node to a linked list, because it doesn't make sense in the context of this case to actually just add one node at a time. In fact, what we are going to do is we're going to have the constructor, when the constructor runs, just build a whole grid for us at a specified size. So what's going to happen is we have a node, and the node can link up, down, left, and right. Now, it doesn't actually have to be named that, and you can have more than one link if you want, but it's just for the diagram's purpose. It actually looks a little bit easier that way. And then what we're going to do is we're going to add nodes like so, and we're just going to link them in like this. And I will demonstrate with just a 4x4 here. So we're going to just add in new nodes like so. Okay, and I'm not even going to do the whole 4x4 just because I don't want to waste all your time just watching me constructing nodes. Okay, so you can see once we've done the top row, they all link back and forth to each other. Then what we can do is we can actually go down and create the next row. And then we're going to actually link this up like so, and this one back down. And then we can link a new one, and so on and so forth. Now this one's going to link here, this one's going to link back, and then it's going to have to link up like this, and like that. And we're going to have to keep going on and on like that. But you'll see it's actually not nearly as bad as we think. So let's get started. It looks complicated, but it's not really that bad, especially if we take it step by step. So the first thing we're going to need to do is to actually program the node. So here I have my Java project, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make a package and just say I'm going to program the node. Now, what's in a node? Well, a node technically isn't really anything on its own. It doesn't actually have any runnable code. It's just a data structure. So what's going to happen here is we are going to say a node consists of, let's say, a data item. Private int data. Okay, and then we're also going to have private node, and then we're going to have our 4 links. So node up, down, left, and right. All right, now when a node is first created, it's going to be assigned a value of 0 for its data, but we also would potentially like to have it be able to create a node where the data is assigned. So we're just going to say public nodes. We'll have constructor here, public node int data, and all that will say is this dot data is equal to data. All right, we're going to need getters and setters, so let's just go to source, generate getters and setters, select all, generate. Okay, and you can see then we have get data, get up, get set up, and so on and so forth. All right, so our node is actually created now, and we can move on to the actual linked list. So we are going to create a new class, and this class we will call linked grid. All right, so what does a linked grid class consist of? Well, the first thing is it needs a node reference to the first node. And as you can see, if we go to our diagram, that's what we have, is a node reference to our first node. Now, the thing is, when you create a linked grid, you're going to have to specify its size. So we are going to go and create a constructor where the size can be specified. So we will say public linked grid, int size. All right, so, well, we can call it perhaps better dimension. All right, now with the linked list, what we did is we pushed individual nodes onto the list, but it actually doesn't make sense to do that here because once we know the dimensions, we can actually just construct the whole thing all at once. So let's start off just at the very beginning and just put our first node in. So what we'll just say is first is equal to new node. And what we can do is we can actually just give it a 0 or something like that. Well, let's actually, just so we can display it, we'll just actually have a counter, right? But technically, this would be just dependent on what you were doing with your problem. Right? So we'll just say int counter, and we will create our first node using counter, and then we'll go counter plus plus to increment the counter so that the next one will be, so the first node will be counter 1, and then, or will be counter 0 or counter 1, and then we'll say counter 1, and then next one will be counter 2, then counter 3, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's go take a look and see what we've done so far. Okay, so we've created a node, and then what we've done is we've linked this first reference to it, like so. And we've given it a number 1. All right, now what we need to do is then we have to go and create the whole rest of the grid. So let's go take a look, or the whole rest of the row. Now we're not going to worry about the whole grid, we're just going to go with the rest of the row. Now I guess one thing we should do is we should say if dimension is greater than 0, right? So like, I guess if the user tries to specify a dimension that's negative or 0, then we just don't do anything, right? And that will prevent us from having an error there. All right, so, okay, now, then what we'll do is we'll say for, well, let's actually just build the next node in the list, and we'll see where we go from there. So what we'll need is we'll have to make node temp is equal to new node, and we will say counter plus plus. Okay, so that will give us the number 2 node, and it's going to be called temp. Okay, so there's our number 2 node. It's going to get a 2, and it's going to be called temp. All right, and that's it. But what we have to do is we have to actually attach it onto the first. Now, for now, we could say first dot set right is equal to temp, and temp dot set left is back to first. But then when we add the number 3 node, that's going to create a problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create actually another node reference called the column marker. Okay, and the column marker is just going to indicate what column we're currently working on. Okay, so let's just go like that. Just make a little arrow here. Okay, so there's my column marker. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by just setting the column marker to be the first. So I set first to be a new node, and then I say node column marker is equal to first. Okay, now I've created my temp node, and it's a new node. And so what I can do is I can actually set that to be, I can actually set that to start linking it up. But here's the thing, I don't really need this name temp here. I can just say column marker set right to be a new node. Okay, so I'll code it first without that using temp, and then I'll show you how we can actually simplify things a little bit more. Well, maybe not simplify, but simplify the code. Okay, so we have node temp is equal to new node, counter plus plus. Then what we're going to do is we're going to say column marker dot set right So we're going to set the right node to be temp. Okay, and then we're going to say temp dot set right to be equal to set left to be to the column marker. All right, so we have column marker set right to be temp, temp set left to be column marker. So let's take a look. So column marker set to the right to be temp, temp set to the left to be the column marker. Now, the next thing we need to do is we're going to need to move this column marker up. Okay, so we can say column marker is equal to temp. All right, now the next thing we're going to do is just basically repeat this process. All right, so we're going to say make a new node. That new node's name is going to be called temp, right? And then column marker is going to set right to be temp. Temp is going to set left to be column marker. We're going to move the column marker up again. And how many times do we repeat this? Well, because we already made the first node, we do this dimension minus 1 times. All right, so let's go take a look at what this looks like. So up here on this line is where we actually made the first node. And so if we have, let's say, like in this case, I'm going to be modeling a chessboard. What will happen is that the dimension will be 8. I already made my first node here, so I need to repeat this 7 more times. So I can just actually put this into a for loop. Int x is equal to 0. X is less than dimension minus 1 and x plus plus. All right, and then just bury everything in there, like so. Okay, so now we have our temp is made with a new node. Okay, now here's the thing. I'm going to show you, and a lot of people don't like this because it makes things a little more complicated to look at, but actually it'll clean up the code a little bit here in that we don't need actually this temp. Instead of saying temp is equal to is a new node and then column marker dot set right to be temp, what we can do is say get rid of this temp and say the column marker is equal to a new node. Okay, so we can just actually create that new node all at once. Right now we're getting red lines here because of the because temp doesn't have a name technically right now, or temp isn't a thing. Okay, so column marker set right to be a new node. Now here we're saying temp dot set left, but well, there's no temp. So how do we talk about temp? Well, what we can do is we can say column marker dot get right, right? Because now column marker get right is that new node that we made, and set left back to temp. And then we can say column marker equals column marker dot get right, and we never had to make a temp node. Right? Either way will work, and yeah, it doesn't really matter if you do it either way. Like this one I think will actually be a little more efficient when it runs, but you might be sacrificing efficiency for readability, I guess. So okay. So what I want to do is I want to actually be able to make a way to test this. Now, in order to test it, I'm going to have to be able to display it to see if it's actually coming out right. And I want to test it just to make sure that I have things going properly before I continue on. So what we're going to do is we're going to say public void display, and we are going to make a display algorithm. Okay, so I'm going to say node row. Actually, we will say, yeah, node row is equal to first. Okay, and I'm going to have to say also node row marker is equal to first. And you'll see why I need to do this in a moment here. So the first thing I want to do is just print out all of the node values all the way across the first row. So I'm going to say while row is Actually, let's just call this temp. While temp is not equal to null, so meaning that there is a node there, then I'm going to system out print the temp dot get data. So I'm going to print out temp's data with a space. All right, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to move temp up. How do you move temp up? Well, you say temp is equal to temp dot get right. So temp goes to the right. Okay, now at the end of this, this should print out the whole thing. And then what we will say is, we will say, now this will take temp all the way to the end of the first row. Now what we want to do is we want to print out an end line here. Okay, and then we want to move down. So what we're going to do is we're going to say temp is equal to row marker dot get down, because the row marker is staying at the front of the row, and the row marker is equal to temp. All right, so basically the temp is row marker get down, row marker moves down with temp to keep track of the row. And then we keep actually repeating this, and we just say while row marker does not equal to null. So meaning that as long as there's a row to print, we're going to just keep printing this. Okay, and I believe that should work, so let's take a look. Okay, oh, and I'm running totally the wrong code. All right. Oh, and I don't actually have a main to run this, so let's actually throw in a main there. So linked grid tester. For this one, we'll need a main. Okay, and all we're going to do is just say linked grid LG is equal to new linked grid, let's say 8, because we're going to make like a chessboard type thing. Linked grid. Okay, and then we're going to say LG dot display and see what happens. Now, of course, the constructor for the linked grid isn't complete, but we should be able to see if it looks right. And there you go. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 8 nodes going all the way across. Great. So far, so good. Let's go build the rest of the grid. So at this point, what we have is this situation here where the column marker, let's just quickly fill this in to show what it would look like here at the end. Okay, so column marker would be moved all the way to the end. Temp would have gone away. Okay, and we have our links all linked up. All right. So temp has gone away. Let's just put it over here for now. So at the end of our algorithm, this is what our linked list, our linked grid kind of looks like here. Okay, and so what we need to do is we are going to need to go and then reset to the beginning of the list and then make the new one. So what we want to do is we want to actually make this new node down here. Okay, well, how do we do that? Well, actually, what we need is our friend, the row marker. All right, so we're going to need the row marker, which is similar to the column marker. Okay, so currently row marker's point is going to point here. So let's go throw that in. So we have at the very beginning, we will have node row marker is equal to first. All right, now at the end, what we want to do is make a new node going down. So we are going to say row marker. Well, let's do it like this first. Node temp is equal to row marker, or is equal to new node. It'll be easier for a lot of people to see like this. Okay, and counter plus plus. So we'll assign it a number. Now remember, you don't have to assign it a number. I'm just doing this just to visualize what's happening here. Okay, so now we have this temp. Okay, so this temp here. All right, I'll just put it there. and we need to start attaching things. So what we can say is that temp set up to be the row marker and row marker set down to be temp. So let's go to the code. So we're going to say row marker dot set down to be temp and temp dot set up to be the row marker. Right? So that's going to link those two together. So row marker set down to be temp, temp set up to be the row marker, and then we got to actually move this row marker down like this. Okay, we're also going to need to move the column marker over here over to this temp as well. Okay, so we're going to say row marker is equal to temp and column marker also equal to temp. Okay, so we can say row marker is equal to temp, column marker also equal to temp. Okay, so now we are set. Now, once again, we have the first node in our new row. Okay, so if you look, we got the first node, and we just have to build the rest of the row. So we are going to say temp is equal to new node. Okay, so we're going to make a new node there. So temp. Now, before we continue, actually, do we really need this temp here? Right? Well, again, what we have is row marker set down to be temp, and so we could just say row marker is equal to this new node. Okay, so we can say row marker is equal set down to be a new node. Okay, and then so we made a new node there, and we set it all at once. All right, and then temp dot set up. Okay, now temp doesn't have a name, so we have to say row marker dot get down set up. So go down from the row marker and then set that node's up marker, up reference back to the row marker. Okay, and then row marker is equal to row marker dot get down, and column marker is also equal to the row marker. Okay, so that should actually clear things, make things a little bit nicer. We're not creating extra nodes and extra variables that we don't need, but I can see how it would be confusing. So if you choose to do this with the temp, like I said, you might be sacrificing a little bit of efficiency, but you're probably gaining way more readability. All right, nonetheless, here we go. So what we're going to do is we want to put this new node here and link it up. Well, what we can do is we can say column marker. Well, let's do it with the temps and then we'll clean it up with that. So we'll say temp, node temp is equal to new node. And then we're going to attach the column marker, the column markers get right over or set right over to it. So we're going to link it across on the horizontal way. Okay, so temp. So once again, node temp is equal to new node and counter plus plus. And we're going to say column marker dot set right to be temp and temp dot set right to be back to the, or set left to be the column marker. Right? So at this point, we have temp is a new node. We have that already in the diagram. Column marker set right to be temp. So column marker is going to be set right to be temp. Temp set left to be the column marker. And let's see if I can find my mouse here. There it is. Okay. Now, what we got to do now is, well, we could clean this up again. It's up to you, I guess. Let's finish it off here. Let's finish linking it all together, though. We have it linked side to side, but we don't have it linked up and down. And what we want to do is we want to be able to link this number 2 node all the way like to the back to the temp. So how are we going to do that? All right. So, well, the temp actually does have a name. what we can do is we can say temp set up, right? So let's go do that. So we're going to say temp.setup. Well, where are we going to set it to, right? Like that's the question. So we're going to say setup, but this number 2 node actually does have a name, right? So the number 2 node, let me just finish writing in the numbers here. Okay, so the number 2 node has a name. It's actually column marker get up, get right. Right, so if you start at the column marker, then you can go up and then you can go right. So what we can say is that temp set up to be the column marker dot get up dot get right. Okay, so go up and start at the column marker and go up and go right. And so then temp has been set up in that direction. Okay, so now temp has been set up. And now we can refer to this number 2 node as temp.getUp. So we can say temp.getUp set down back to be temp, like that. So let's go and do that. So we can say temp.getUp.setDown. Oops, what is that? Temp.getUp.setDown to be back to temp, back to itself. Okay, and so then what we have is, I don't know why this column marker just suddenly appeared there again. That's really irritating. Okay. Okay, so now what we have is this next node is linked up properly, and all we have to do is move the column marker over, just like we did before, over to here, and then we're ready to go for the next one over and over again. Because what happens is this node, when we create it, never actually refers back to row marker or first or anything like that. It's always just done with column marker and temp. Now, the question is, do we really need temp? Right, so what we can do is we can say column marker set right. Okay, and instead of using temp, we can just say as a new node. Okay, just like before. Okay, now so a column marker is set right, and then everywhere where we see temp, we can just refer to that as column marker dot get right. Okay, so column marker get right, so go to the right and set its left back to the column marker. Column marker go to the right and set its up to the column marker get up, get right, and then you can also say column marker dot get right, go up, set down, back to be the same thing, column marker get right. Now, it does look a lot uglier like this, but this way we're not creating extra nodes that we don't need. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is we're going to say column marker is equal to column marker dot get right. So we're just going to move the column marker over as we did in the diagram. So now the column marker is pointing where the temp used to be pointing, or I guess where it still is right now, right? Except we're not using temp. And then what we can do is just repeat this process over and over again, right? Well, how many times do you have to repeat it? Okay, well, what we did here is, here we said row marker set down to be a new node, and then row marker get down and set back up, right? So this is the first node in the next row. So this is, let's start labeling things here. So this is creating the first node. This section here is creating the rest of the row. This part here is creating the first node in a row. And then the whole rest of this point here, row marker is equal to row marker dot get down, this is creating the rest of the row. Okay, so now what we'll have is, when we are finished creating the rest of the row, we will have something that looks like this. Okay, so we'll have more nodes like this. We will have all the links set up, hopefully. Okay, and these coming up like this. Okay, and our column marker will actually be over here at the end. Okay, well, what do we do to set up for the next row? Okay, so this is number 7 and 8. Okay, so what we need to do is say row marker dot get down or set down to be a new node, and column marker is equal to the row marker set down, and row marker moves down. So, but look at that, row marker set down to be a new node, row marker dot get down set up to be back to the row marker move down, column marker move to the row marker. So actually, what we can do is just repeat this whole section over and over again. Okay, so again, that's really irritating. But okay, so for int x is equal to 0, x is less than. Now, again, it's going to be dimension minus 1 and not dimension. Now, the reason why is because in this first for loop up here, we already created the first row. And so what we just need to do here is create every other row, but not the first one. So that's why it's minus 1. All right, and there we go. All right, let's run this and hopefully it works. Okay, so we got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Let's see what happened. Okay, so actually what happened is we just created the first row, the first node here, and then we created the next node, but we actually didn't loop this to make the whole rest of the row. So let's go and do that. For int y is equal to 0, y is less than, again, dimension minus 1, and y plus plus. And we will just do this whole thing here. And I should have picked up on that because that's pretty much what we have over here. Right, and so then we make the whole rest of the row, then we loop back, make the new one going down, and let's test this one and see if it works. There we go. Okay, and so we have an 8 by 8. They all linked correctly, at least they appear to be, and there goes from 1 to 64, so everything looks right. And that is the basis of how to set up your foundational linked grid structure. You can see overall that it's not really that bad. It's just a matter of taking things in stride and just doing things one step at a time, linking things as you go. And just taking it, like building it. I like to call it the typewriter method, where you're just starting at the first item in a row, and you just keep moving all the way across until you get to the end, and then move down, build the first item, link it up, and then just keep moving away across. Anyways, if you do have questions or comments, remember to put them in the comment section. Just remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video.